It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank in Formation. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to Your Personal Bank Show, and I'll tell you what, we have a lot to unbox today. There's a lot going on in terms of news and what's going on and you know how this is going to affect our money, what the economy is going to look like going forward. And well, I guess the biggest news, obviously, of course, if anyone, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know that there's been at least 2 vaccines that have had final stage approval. Well, not approval, but shown to be about 95% effective, which is awesome. That's great news. It's far in excess of what many of the medical experts were predicting. So that's of course excellent news. And because of the the government and private partnership, the Operation Warp Speed, they call it, the pre-created whatever millions of doses. So there's somewhere upwards of 50 million doses, I guess, that should be available before the end of the year. So we could be looking at a situation in a matter of weeks where some of the initial people, the healthcare workers, maybe some of the high-risk folks start getting access to the vaccine. Probably looking at somewhere, like I said, first quarter of next year, roughly, when it should become widely available for the general public, which should go an awful long way to reducing, if not eliminating, the whole threat of the virus. And that would be great. I mean, obviously, that's great news. That's really what the big thing we've been looking for nearly a year now. Well, yeah, close to a year, I should say. And hopefully then the shutdowns and things like that have occurred as a result will dissipate and ultimately be gone. Obviously, that's great news. The thing we're looking at in the short term, though, of course, as we point out, there's a number of states that have already started shutting down because the number of cases have increased. It's actually happening across the world. The second wave that the medical community was sharing that would probably happen this fall apparently is doing its thing. Obviously, there's a lot less severity in terms of the medical community knows they know a lot more about it. They know how to treat it. Thankfully, there's less folks dying from it percentage-wise, things like that. There's a lot of therapeutics and things like that available now. And again, once this vaccine comes into play, that should make a major difference. So it looks like, from a short-term standpoint, we've got some shutdowns. A good portion of the economy is going to be shut down again. For how long? Hard to say, but looks like fourth quarter is going to be rough. First quarter, and this is some of the stuff I'm sharing with. It's coming, like it says in the promo, you've listened before. I'm chairman of the board of A Bank in Formation. So some of this information, of course, is public. We all know about it. Some of it I'm sharing comes from like our board meetings, information we're getting from the banking community. We're in the process of opening and starting a bank. We're looking at, from our standpoint, I'm getting a lot of my clients ask me, they know that we're in the process of starting. It's a startup. It's a startup company, business like any other. And we're closely watching the economy and and what's going on, and we're looking at possibly first quarter next year of moving forward with that, the process. The thing is, the question marks that still exist. Obviously, the vaccine hasn't been used yet. The trials appear to be very, very positive, so that's very encouraging. We'll obviously need to see actual results, but that should happen in the matter of the next few months. Assuming those are positive. The other big question is, and that'll be great. The other big question that still remains, 2 of them, is, I guess a simpler one is, is there's a Senate runoff on January 5th in Georgia, as many people know. And that's basically, depending on who wins those 2 seats, it's going to determine a majority of which party's in control of the Senate. Of course, if the Republicans win one of the 2, they maintain majority, and if the Democrats win both, then they would get the majority. Again, assuming Biden is inaugurated as president, which appears to be more and more likely as time goes forward. I know the Trump campaign is still filing lawsuits and challenging and whatnot, and I think they should. I think it's great they're doing that because there 4 years ago, there was a lot of toxicity involved. There was a lot of people that just did not accept the results of Trump being president. And that kind of went on for 4 years. And a lot of, toxicity is probably the best word I can share, occurred as a result. And so what a lot of people are emotionally tied into this, are upset about the results, and others are very happy. We're a very divided country, so it's about 50-50, just like it was 4 years ago. And so roughly half the country was not happy about the results, and many were very vocal about saying he was illegitimate president and all these kinds of things, and he's not my president. We heard all that stuff. I don't want to see us go through another 4 years like that. And if there's a big percentage of folks who believe that this election result was not legitimate, the shenanigans were going on or whatever, they're going to feel the same way. And there'll be that ongoing, that it'll just switch sides, but that toxicity will still be there and will remain. We'll be sharply divided, and that'll continue. So by going through the process, going through the audits, going through the recounts, going through the legal process, to review everything, check it out, make sure it's hunky-dory, make sure everything, there's no funny business going on, all that kind of stuff, is just going to give some people, and hopefully enough, a sense of confidence. Okay, maybe I didn't like the result, but, it was legitimate. And I guess that's important for our country, for our democracy, for us moving forward as a country, and potentially getting the ability to actually work together and not be so divided. That's necessary. So anyone who's on the side that says, hey, it's over, move forward, move on, needs to understand that the folks who are not happy with the result, think back 4 years, think how you felt, and understand, let them go through the process, because this is good for everyone. I mean, literally anyone who's a voter should care about whether their vote counts or not. And that's the very basis of our democracy. So I have no problem. In fact, I applaud the effort that's being made to make sure that we had a clean, fair election. Okay, and there's been some problems that have been uncovered, and some, like Georgia very recently found a couple of counties that the votes weren't counted. They were in a hard drive or a thumb drive, I guess, and it wasn't enough to make the difference apparently. But the fact that they found these things, I think, is very important, because we want our elections to be tight. We want them to be clean. They definitely need to be more transparent. One thing I think one thing I hope and see going forward is much more transparency. These things where, observers are getting kicked out, which happened in Pennsylvania, obviously, and there's been legal fights both sides, both ways about it. That's just not good for the country. That's not good for anyone. I don't care who it is. I get there's a lot on the line. I get there's a lot of emotion. I get there's all those things. I understand, because I have some of those same feelings myself. But the reality is, it needs to be fair. It needs to be transparent, so everyone has confidence in the result, and we don't have this toxicity, as I was mentioning, the past 4 years, continuing forward. Okay, that way, hey, win or lose, you be confident in the result, and it just means, hey, next time, got to do a little better, right? Better messaging, better candidate, better whatever it may be. Just recognize that if there's a loss, hey, there's a reason, and fix it for the next time. If your message isn't resonating with enough people, then maybe that's a lesson too, that the message needs to be changed, because the majority of the people are not in favor of that message. You see what I'm trying to say? So I kind of got a bit on a sidetrack, but there's one more thing that's of concern, a big question. Like I said, which party is going to be in control, or who's going to be in control of the Senate? Because I think we'll have a very different political situation if the Democrats are in charge of all three, the House, Senate, and the presidency, versus a Republican-controlled Senate. That's going to make a major difference in terms of the economy and things like that going forward. So we'll talk about the other couple other things that are of concern and some other good news in the next segment. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back. We're talking about we're talking about a lot of things today, and really thinking about going forward. what do things look like? And I guess as a big picture thing, I'm starting to touch on some of the positives and some of the concerns that are still out there. And like I said, this is coming from not only, well, personal experience, working with clients, working with the bank, I'm chairman of the board of a bank in formation. All these things were, looking at opening a new business, a bank, FDIC insured bank. So, these are all things that we're looking at and getting expert opinion from and just the general information that's out there. And it looks like from a general standpoint, fourth quarter probably going to be pretty choppy. First quarter, second quarter next year are looking promising. And the main reasons, of course, is, coronavirus is the number of cases are ticking up around the world pretty much. And there are parts of the states have already started shutting things down. And it looks like we're going into another round of shutdowns, at least until the vaccine becomes widely available, is what it appears. And the good news is, got very positive news on that front, as we all know. Looks like there's going to be a vaccine available in the next few weeks, literally. And hopefully by first quarter, maybe second quarter next year, widely available. And, of course, the trials have come out, over 90% effective. That's awesome. And as long as the real world, it works as the trials have shown, which there's no reason to believe it won't, but, there's always real world, right? But as long as it works out like it appears it's going to, we're looking for, a kind of an end to this whole coronavirus episode, whatever you want to call it. And if you think about it from a general standpoint, it's pretty amazing. I just want to say one thought from a standpoint of how Americans, how we deal with crisis. We've always been very strong in that, and that's where I have faith in the American people and the country, is because, when something really needs to be done, like the CARES Act, for example, was widely, bipartisan support, got passed very quickly because it was pretty much universally agreed that there was a real need there. The government, the operation, whatever, I forgot what they call it, where they warp speed, where they, the government and private pharmacies got together to speed up the process of creating a new vaccine. Incredible. I mean, it's never been, apparently I've read and seen things that, like, typically vaccines take a decade or more to create and implement. And it looks like this is going to be done in start to finish less than a year. That's pretty awesome. Because the initial, and I was critical of this, if you go back to yourpersonalbank.com, you can listen to any of the previously recorded shows. I started talking about coronavirus beginning of March, which was actually a few weeks ahead of most of the general public. And I got some flack initially about it, but I was sharing some information I was getting primarily through Federal Reserve and FDIC, by the way. There were some of the, Chairman Powell, the Federal Reserve, was one of the first to publicly come out. And he came out, by the way, something like late February, and raising the alarm and concern about what the potential economic impact of coronavirus would be. Now, it's gotten worse than even he or anyone else imagined, even back then, frankly. The results and the shutdowns and all the things that have happened, the impact to the economy and all those things. But my point, I guess I'm trying to get at is, we as a country didn't really start looking at coronavirus seriously until about mid-March, okay? And it was a little different in different regions of the country. It was a little quicker in some parts than others. But let's say March time frame or so. And now we're in November, and it appears we have a vaccine, I should say, that over 95, something like 95% effective, and it should be approved within a matter of weeks, okay? So let's say by December, it starts being used on the healthcare workers and the frontline people that need it the most. I mean, gosh, that's well under a year, start to finish, where you start realizing, hey, there's a problem. Work together, muster the, there's criticism in terms of how the government handled it. And initially, I had some of those same criticisms. But once they got their heads together and started, it's pretty impressive what's been accomplished here. And it's a combination of and I'm not saying the government is all, the scientists, our private enterprise. The government couldn't have done this on their own. They needed the pharmaceutical industry. And, there's been some article, the pharmaceutical industry would have come up with a vaccine sooner or later, or probably sooner than later anyway, because, well, look at the economic benefit to a company coming out with a vaccine, let's face it. But what the government did do, and this is where the government-private partnership works in cases of emergency, in rare cases of emergency like this, is they basically took the risk off by guaranteeing percentage, a certain amount of purchases of the vaccines, of course, and that took the risk off the companies. Where if they created a vaccine and produced these things and it wasn't affected, they weren't out $1 billion or whatever the number would be, right? 100 million, $1 billion, whatever, right? So it took that financial risk off the table so that they could speed up everything, and they guaranteed purchase and started producing these vaccines even before approval, and a number of different ones, and that, of course, sped up the process, because normally, of course, how a pharmaceutical company would operate would be they would create a vaccine, they would get it approval, and then they'd start manufacturing, which, of course, then takes several more months at least, right? So it was all to speed it up, warp speed. That's a pretty appropriate term. And so that's, again, there's times when the government has a role, does some good stuff, and can operate like the coronavirus thing. There's a couple of good things that came from that. But when you have a very divided government, which is what our founding fathers intended, that's why our system is created the way it is. This is what I gained the most faith, I guess, in the American people, is there was such a divided election here that I really didn't know which way it was going to go, and I don't think a lot of people did. I know what the pollsters said, but I don't have a lot of faith in those either, frankly. And last 2 election cycles have kind of proven that. But anyway, the thing is, divided government is pretty much, for the most part, the best way to go, because that way you don't get one side or the other going all crazy towards what they want to accomplish, and they get this mandate idea. They get this idea that they have this mandate, even though maybe they only have 51% of the population that wants them to do what they're doing. By being divided, it means you got to get most everybody to agree. And that's what that was the intention of the founding fathers. And I've shared this before. There's a book that's made a huge impact on my life. There's been others. It's called Original Intent. I think David Barton is the author. You can still get it on Amazon and other places. But it talks a lot about the original intention of the founding fathers. My point is simple, is when you have such a divided country and you have, they say, the House is controlled by one party and the Senate by the other, that's probably how it should be. Because that way the government's only going to do the things that most everybody kind of agrees on. And the rest of it, where one party or the other side, one side or the other feels like it's important, but the other side is against it, that way 51% isn't lording it over 49%. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's just not healthy. That's not good. Okay? So I'm pretty, hopefully it looks like, we'll see in January. That's what I started to talk about, is depending on how these Senate races do go in Georgia, I'm hopeful that our government remains divided, because in general, I think that's the best way, because for many reasons, like I said. I know it doesn't follow under party lines. I get that. But in general, that's kind of seems like the best way to go, and it keeps the government from overstepping its bounds and doing things going more than it should do, either side, either direction. So like I said, I've gotten a bit sidetracked a little bit. I promise in the next segment I'll get back focused on talking about a couple of the other concerns, at least particularly in the short term, we have about the economy and the markets, and what we're looking at in terms of starting a bank, for example, that applies to investing and your money and everything else out there. And I guess the general big picture thing is, as I've stated this for now over 22 years in my career, is having a portion of your money with some guarantees, with some safety, having a bucket of your money there is just wise, both in good and bad economic times. We'll talk about this more in the next segment, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. We're really talking about, well, unboxing all this stuff that's going on right now and what the kind of the short-term economic money situation looks like and maybe a little bit longer term. And again, I'm basing this a lot on both personal experience over 20 years in the financial industry, working with clients, and as a board president, let's see, I'm chairman of the board of a bank in formation. So we're looking at, we have our board meetings. We're looking at the economic situation and what FDIC is giving us and recommending and things like that in the banking industry in terms of when's a good time to start a bank, start up a company. And you want to go into, when you're starting any new business, ideally you want to go into an upswinging or positive economic scenario. So the short term looks choppy, just the big picture. Fourth quarter certainly looks very choppy because of shutdowns occurring across a number of states. COVID cases are rising. The longer term looks promising because it appears that a vaccine, a very workable vaccine, is going to be available for the general public probably in the first, maybe second quarter of next year. So that should have a big impact in a positive way, obviously. A couple other concerns that are out there, though, are unemployment benefits have been, extended in many places through the end of the year. After that point, then what? What's going to happen there's something like a latest article I just read about 12 million Americans on unemployment still right now. Is that going to get extended? Is our economy going to improve quickly enough that the jobs will start becoming available again? That's hard to say. Like I said, a lot of that's going to depend, frankly, on these Georgia Senate races that happen on January 5th to determine which party controls the Senate. I think that's going to have a lot to do about like these if there's going to be any more COVID-related stimulus, unemployment benefits. And then the other one that's a big concern right now in the real estate world is a lot of this, the mortgage and rent moratoriums, the eviction moratoriums are set to expire at the end of the year. So there's a significant enough percentage of folks who are now behind on mortgage payments or rent. What's going to happen then? And if they don't have a job, they're still on unemployment and their employment benefits go away, then what? You see what I'm saying? That's where the concern is. How's that going to affect real estate prices, values, and all those kinds of things? I can tell you personally, talking to some very, very significant real estate investors, big money folks. I'm talking folks with that deal with millions and billions of dollars, are very, very concerned about this, okay? And it's the uncertainty of that is what their worry is, okay? What's going to happen? And like I said, fixing a mortgage is easier. Refining a mortgage can just tack on the missing months on the end of the mortgage, so extend it that way. Rent is tougher because if somebody's been renting a place and they're, say, several months to maybe 6 months or more behind in rent, are they really going to come up with the rent monies to catch up? Or are they just going to move and start over? I mean, it's so much easier to do that. You see what I'm trying to say? Unless they're absolutely in love with the place they're in and really, really want to stay, there's probably going to be a good percentage that are just to say, chuck it and say, that's it, and move on and start over somewhere else. And basically the landlord's left holding the bag, right? There's a lot of concern about that out there. Okay, so there's that. Of course, the student loan situation. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen there because, of course, payments and interest have been deferred until end of the year also, just like these other things due to COVID. Should somebody I'm getting a lot of questions because I have a lot of clients who either have student loans or their kids or grandkids have student loans and they're paying on those, right? And should they make the payment in January? My only advice I can give them right now is be prepared to do so. But it's hard to say what's going to happen because Democrats have been openly discussing about forgiving a portion of student loan debt. Now, I don't know if it's a good idea or not. There's arguments both sides of that. But the reality of how do you navigate this, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that's hard to, nobody knows. That's the reality. And again, the Senate races are going to be a big part in play of how that's going to happen. There's talk of Biden, if again he becomes inaugurated, of of knocking some off by executive order. If the Democrats control the Senate, I think there would be some more aggressive approaches to it based on what they've said they wanted to do. So my advice has been to folks, just be prepared to make the payments in January, but let's wait and see. Let's just wait and see what happens. And I think after January 5th, a lot of that hopefully question going to get a little clearer. So these are, like I said, these are some of the things that, the shutdowns, the mortgage and eviction moratoriums, the unemployment benefits moratorium, the student loan payment moratoriums, all set to expire at the end of the year. These are all uncertainties that can have some significant impacts on how they end up playing out on the economy. And then, of course, the vaccine being a very positive thing, hopefully that will result in shutdowns being lifted and restrictions like that in our economy, seeing a tremendous, come back and start going again. You know what I mean? Without these, it was starting to. Third quarter, obviously, we had a tremendous bounce back, which was great. But with these additional coronavirus cases coming up, well, who knows, right? And I guess the whole big picture I'm trying to get at, and this is, I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I guess I bring this up constantly because I've just seen in my career so many scenarios where folks have heeded this advice and benefited as a result, and those who chose not to, and then later came to regret they didn't do this. And again, it's about not overcommitting, not having too much of your money, all of your money, I'll put it that way, too high a percentage, subject to risk. Now, whether that would be market risk or tax risk or any other type of risk involved there, doesn't matter. The point is having, a lot of people say to me, well, I'm diversified. I'm on all these sectors and all these different things. But as we've seen just this year, look at the markets in March. I mean, pretty much everything crashed, okay? We saw that in 08, 09. We've seen that in different times. In other words, diversification in different sectors can be effective in a normal market situation. No question, no argument. But when you have these major events occur, we saw it with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen going forward. Is so many 2020 has been the craziest roller coaster ride, certainly of my lifetime, and I think of most people. At this point, nothing surprises me. 2020 is not over yet. What else could happen? I don't want to jinx it or say anything like that. I hope nothing else big happens unless it's good. My point is, at all times, and not just the general, and this doesn't apply to the general economy, but having a portion of your money set aside and something that's guaranteed, has some guarantees, has some safety, all that good stuff, just in case of emergencies or opportunities. It's actually both sides of the coin. So when you have this cash reserve, and your personal bank is a great tool for that. I hear a lot of people talk about moving into cash, for safety and stuff like that. That's nice, but when you move into cash, especially these days, you're not earning any interest to speak of. The interest rates are so low, it's ridiculous. Why not put it into a personal bank and get a 6% dividend and have access to anywhere from 50 to 85% of the money day one? Okay? That way it's there, it's sitting there, it's growing when you're not using it, and even when you can access it because you do have an emergency or the economy takes a downturn, or an opportunity. See, that's the thing. When big moves happen like this, big opportunities also present themselves, don't they? So if you've got some cash set aside here and you see an opportunity for there's a stock or a piece of real estate or something like that, you say, hey, I want to buy this. You've got the cash ready to go. It's the perfect storm. It works. It's a great situation for you. That's what I'm trying to say. So don't just look at this as a downside protection mechanism, although it is. It also is an opportunity mechanism. By having those funds available, and your personal bank does that, getting the 6% dividend, and then the last part of it, we'll touch on the next segment a little further, is when you access the funds through the bank line of credit, like we teach, you're still picking up positive arbitrage. In other words, if you're getting credited 6% dividends and you're getting charged in the 3s when you spend the money to invest or take in an opportunity, or take advantage of, take care of an emergency, you're still picking up 2 or 3%. The difference, you're keeping it. We'll talk about that more in the next segment, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Alrighty, we're rounding third, wrapping this up today. I guess to summarize, really what we've been talking about is what do we do now, where are we at, where are we going, and how does this affect the economy and my money? And I guess that's probably the best way I can explain it. And like I said, I've unboxed a lot of different things. Again, this is coming from, my experience dealing with, being the chairman of the board of a bank in formation. We're talking to banking experts, folks from FDIC, various places like that, to get advice on when we think is a good time to open and start a bank. Personal experience and working with clients and just, 22 plus years watching all this stuff. And it's no doubt it's been a crazy year. Again, the good news on the horizon is it looks like we got a couple of viruses, maybe more, that are going to be very effective and be available starting, before the end of this year, and in general use or general availability, probably first, maybe second quarter next year. That's awesome. That should alleviate a lot of the issues and concerns, particularly anything revolved around coronavirus. But before we get there, we've got so many different things going on, like who's going to be in charge of the Senate? We won't know which party will be until January 5th. So there's some real uncertainty in the meantime. That will also then affect in terms of COVID relief, if there's going to be any more or not. It's going to affect these mortgage and moratorium, mortgage and eviction moratoriums, and student loan payments and interest that all expire, and unemployment benefits that all expire December 31st. Is that going to continue? I mean, there's something like 12 million people still on receiving unemployment benefits right now. And if they're behind on rent or mortgage payments on top of that because they haven't had a job, what happens starting in January? See, those are things that need to still shake out, and we're going to see what happens. And, of course, a vaccine is great news, no question. But how are these other things going to shake out and impact our economy and our money? So the shorter term, lots of looks. Well, it's like a minefield. Are we going to? It's like navigating a minefield. Are any of these mines Are we going to step on any of these mines, or they explode on us, or not? My hope is, of course, not. But they're certainly there. And then we'll get through this. That's the positive thing. By next quarter, couple of quarters or so, we should be able to navigate through this and get past the minefield, and then it'll be a lot clearer. So, from our standpoint, we're looking at probably second quarter next year is what kind of the consensus is, because then a lot of these questions and things will be kind of settled, and we'll see what the impact is. Because, again, there's just a lot of concern. And I'm going to tell you, in the real estate market in particular, an awful lot of concern from a lot of big money, big investors. I'm talking folks with millions and literally billions of dollars invested in real estate, who are very, very concerned about how the mortgage and eviction moratoriums are going to impact their business, the values of the real estate itself, and those kinds of things. Because, again, it makes sense. If somebody's behind on their rent several months, maybe 6 months or more even, and now, and a lot of times because they haven't had a job or whatever, and now the moratorium's over, are they going to start catching up on those? Or are they just going to move out and start over and go somewhere else? You can see why the landlords, and the landlords are going to be left holding the bag, right? You can see why they're concerned. Mortgages will probably, some people will move on, but mortgages can be refinanced or whatever, by tacking on the missed payments onto the end of a mortgage. It's a little easier fix. But again, that person has to have a job or income again. And if there's unemployment and they've lost that, and they don't have a new job because things haven't gotten up to speed yet, that's going to be tough for them to renegotiate that, you see. So there is some real concern in those areas, and those could have some significant impact. Like I said, best analogy, we're going through a minefield. There's several mines. We've identified what they are. They may or may not blow up on us. Hopefully not, but be prepared in case they do, because any one of those certainly could. And that's why, again, having a portion of your money set aside, having it safe, having some guarantees, having some liquidity on it, That's what all the personal bank does. Again, 6% dividends. And then accessing the monies for the emergencies if you have them, whether it's the general economy or your personal situation, okay, or taking advantage of these opportunities. Folks, you know, depending on what does end up happening between now and the next couple of quarters or so, there can be some really significant opportunities that could present themselves. Yeah, there could be some real buying opportunities. And if you're, as I see quite often, folks who are overcommitted into one arena or another, in other words, all their money's pretty much tied up in this, and then whether it's the market and it takes a drop, you'll be able to say, well, now it's a buy. Certainly, end of March was a buying opportunity. We saw a roughly 30% drop in the S&P 500 in 30 days, right? That was a great buying opportunity. The problem I ran into quite often with folks, is literally nearly, or if not all, 100% of their allocations were in the market, and pretty much everything dropped. In other words, they rode the roller coaster down. They didn't have any dry powder, as the term is put. They didn't have any cash reserves sitting over here ready they can implement and take advantage of the opportunity. Now, I had a number of personal bank clients who did. In other words, they had cash in their policies. They didn't lose value. They still had the money there. They had most, if not all, of their money liquid, depending on how long they'd had these. Remember, after you've had these set up and rolling for a few years, it's 100% liquid of everything you've contributed, okay? And then some. And those folks were able to take advantage, and I got a lot of calls about that. What do you think? I said, well, seems like a great buying opportunity to me. I'd allocate some dollars if you feel comfortable with some of these things. I'm not here to advise you one way or the other, but you know, if you're comfortable with it, and it obviously turned out to be a great buying opportunity, right? We could see the same kind of thing in the real estate market, depending on what happens after these moratoriums expire. We could see some real gyrations in terms of values, because if some of these landlords have to take it on the chin, some of them aren't going to survive. And there's going to be buying opportunities as a result, right? Now, you don't want to take advantage of somebody else's pain and suffering. I get that. But the thing is, it's part of life. I mean, if you don't take advantage and purchase this deal, somebody else will, right? So you didn't cause something back in the day when we used to buy a lot of real estate. We haven't for a while because, frankly, in my opinion, the values have been it's been overpriced for a while. But my wife, something she would say, she would feel bad sometimes because, you know, we would be purchasing a property that had been through a foreclosure, right? And she felt bad for the person that got foreclosed on it. And as I'd explained to her, we didn't cause the financial or economic situation that person went through. We just came along later, and now we have a great deal. We have an opportunity to purchase it at a great price. And if we don't, somebody else will. But we didn't cause the original pain. She goes, yeah, I see your point. So that's something always to keep in consideration. Not here to take advantage of other people or anything like that. It's just when an opportunity does present itself, you want to have the wherewithal, being able to take advantage of it and not pull from funds that could have a penalty or a cost or a tax implication or had lost value recently because, say, there was a economic downturn or market downturn. You want to have it in a separate bucket. That's called true diversification into a non-correlated asset. If you want more information on that, contact us at yourpersonalbank.com. I'll be happy to discuss that with you further. Or you can go to our website, yourpersonalbank.com. Some of the previous shows, you'll see I talk a lot about non-correlated assets, diversifying into that. Again, having that separate bucket on this over here, it's not impacted by the markets or tax rates or any of those kinds of things. And then those funds and it's highly liquid with guarantees. So you've got access to those funds for when these opportunities do present themselves. And I firmly believe that we're going to see some of those in the near future. Okay. When those do come about, you have the wherewithal, you have the ability to take those funds without any implications of taxes or negative repercussions. Okay. You can take those dollars and take advantage of that buying opportunity. And that's a big part of how wealth is created. So, as always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're on every noon, Tuesdays at noon or Thursdays at 1. and contact us at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. I'd love to talk to you about this further on how we can enhance your financial future.
Listen Tuesday at noon and Thursdays at 1 for more information on Your Personal Bank. Contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.